Hey, what's up, y'all? Wanted to make another video today, and I actually watched a video very recently, and this is where this idea came from. And the concept here is that why not being very smart or kind of being dumb helped me succeed in my career as a software engineer or just kind of in life in general. The video that I watched very recently, it talked about how the people that are the most successful in our world, the richest, quote unquote, are tend not to be the most brilliant. For example, they don't have like the PhDs, that kind of stuff, or they're not the ones in the labs doing active research and know the ins and outs of one exact topic. And the example that this video used is that most business owners are are just regular folks, right? Like most business owners that own like a car wash, they own a mechanic shop, they own a restaurant, a successful restaurant, any of the above. They're regular folks that learned how to cook, they learned how to build, work on cars, that kind of thing, and they started their own business. They aren't necessarily the people that are on the top of their field reinventing or creating the next Porsche race car or something like that, or the next Porsche engine technology. They're folks that just know enough to be able to have a business to sustain themselves. So this idea came about, and I realized that this is actually a huge factor that helped me succeed because I'm not that person, right? I'm not the person that has the PhD. In fact, I'm the person that barely finished college, had working in construction, average Joe, and I was still able to break in and find success, and ultimately being kind of naive, being kind of fearless and misunderstood and misled ultimately was a huge factor in my success. And so I want to talk about this because I want to hopefully give you guys some motivation in the sense that at least when during the time, especially when I was applying for jobs and early in my career, I just never felt good enough, right? Like my coworkers had PhDs, even now went to top ranked schools and living in a major city. I live in San Francisco. A lot of folks, brilliant people, they have the master's degrees, went to Stanford or whatever it may be, and I always felt lesser. And of course, they do absolutely know more than I do in many of these fields, and they are much more of an expert in many times. But basically, just want to give you insight on how I was still able to succeed, even though there are folks out there. And I think that this is actually a phenomenon that happens way more often than we think. And I think that most average person can tap into this and utilize this concept. So, I want to give you kind of an idea, right? So, to start things off, it's like I think I was able to succeed in my current career and being able to get my first job, for example, because of this. When I first got my first rejection, it's like you're sitting in front of really smart people interviewing. They're brilliant. They tell you no. You meet other people that have certain degrees or whatever it may be. They tell you you don't know enough. They knew X amount when you first started. And if you were smarter than I was, you would start adding up the statistics. You understand the stats of how hard it is to make this thing happen. So I will say the things that I've accomplished, right? Like breaking into the career of software in general, it's not an easy thing, especially if you don't have that background. If you come from blue collar work, that kind of stuff, it's like 5-10% maybe or something like that. Versus like if you got a CS degree, you'll probably have like a 50% chance you'll land a computer science job after college. It's like the thing about it is that I just wasn't smart enough to understand that there was a 5% chance. So I just kept on taking that chance over and over again. I kept on rolling that dice. And luckily for myself is that it only took, I only need one good dice roll to land that job. So, although it took 1,000 attempts, for example, right? I just only needed one. I only needed two. And that probability does happen over time. And I think that that's why what I'm saying is like a lot of folks, if you understand the stats, it's like you realize you almost rule out that concept of doing that because you're you're almost wasting time. It's going to take you months and months to do it, and that's what I had though. At the end, ultimately, that's actually what only thing I had was that I had time, in the sense that I realized that it might take my other classmates one try to pass a class or to pick up the software topic. It might take me 3 attempts, but at the end of the day, a year from now, we both were able to learn the topic and I can still apply and go after that same job. And so right now, same thing in my career, and what helped me advance in my career very quickly and make a high level software job at a major tech company before 30 is the same idea, is that I'm really good at pairing up with folks that are really smart, understanding their ideas, and then executing on them and not being afraid to execute on them. I think that my main role for a lot of the jobs I've had in the past is like I'm a part of the conversation, of course, in adding and contributing to like the design, that kind of stuff. But I'm also the person that here's the idea. Most will say that's dumb, it's not going to work. But I'll be like, hey, I'll be the one that tries it, you know? And if it doesn't work out, it's on me. And for the most part, it ends up not being as black and white. Even though if we fail, we made some advancements in on the team dynamics, on next project, that kind of thing. So at the end, even though it didn't hit the conclusion that we wanted, I still think that trying is better than not trying at the end of the day. And at the very end, it's funny. It's like no matter how brilliant an idea is, especially in software, it just all still comes back to fundamentals, if statements, for loops, if else's, numbers, variables, and just being able to implement small foundational concepts that like someone in high school could be able to implement. It's just that it's many of them tacked together in a correct way to make a very smart product. So it's like the barrier of being smart almost wasn't extremely necessary, because what it takes to implement the project, it still comes back to the fundamentals for almost every single project. So that was another aspect of that. So if you take anything away from this, and my conclusion on this is that you don't need to be the smartest person in the world to make this happen for yourself, to break into the industry. And if you're just honestly dumb enough to try, it will happen if you try enough times. And that's ultimately all that happened to me. There's no big secret or impossible feat that I broke to get to a certain place. I'm not any sort of super genius or something like that to make this happen. I simply was too naive to understand the statistics, and just was dumb enough to put in 2 years, 3 years of time just plugging away, not afraid to apply with a bad resume or not knowing as much as others, that kind of thing, and just rolling the dice over and over again until it happened. So, and that's ultimately it. And of course, last thing I want to add is that one thing that I'm always very fearful of, especially growing up from a low income area, is that there's a lot of folks that haven't put in the foundational work and are also taking this risk, right? Like that's one end. And then on the other end, there's people that have PhDs or whatever it may be, doctors and such, that are afraid to take risks because they understand how slim the percentages are. I would say I'm somewhere right in the middle. You got to do your foundational stuff, be able to be in the conversation, have the foundations and the skills to at least back yourself up when you need to take action, right? Like you might not know how to design the next Porsche engine to, meet the next supercar, but you need to be able to at least work on cars to be able to take some of these risks. So I do want to urge that. I don't want anyone thinking like, oh yeah, I'll just go out and just like, I'm just gonna go apply to some job. There definitely is some foundational work, but I do want to emphasize that foundational work isn't as far as you think for the most part. There are always going to be people that are much smarter than you, but I will say that, having an aspect of like just not even recognizing the statistics of how hard something is ultimately is very, very helpful, at least helped me succeed. So wanted to kind of talk about this a little bit. If you have any questions and if this helps you at all, I'd love to know. And of course, if you don't have anything, I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Laters.